Good afternoon. This is Ann McConnell from the Toy Association. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Media Consumption Habits of U.S. Gen Alpha 2026, Key Takeaway for Toy Brands. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items I'd like to go over. Today's session is being recorded. A copy of the recording and PDF of the presentation will be made available to all who registered in the coming days. Simply look for an email from the Toy Association. It will also be available on our website on demand. We will have time for questions at the end of the session, so as the session moves along, simply use the Q&A icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen to pose a question. We'll address them at the end. Our speakers today are from Precisify, formerly Precise TV. We will hear from Mark Bassett, Head of Influencer at Precisify. Mark has over 15 years' experience in the influencer and entertainment sectors. He works on projects for major gaming, toys and film companies, extending to consumer tech and fast-moving consumer goods. We'll also hear from Darcy Slattery, Content and Research Manager at Precisify. With more than 5 years marketing experience, she oversees the development and delivery of materials ranging from deep dive proprietary panel insight reports to the daily pulse of Precisify's content marketing calendar and digital outreach. Precisify is a world-leading, kid-safe, COPPA-certified agency that empowers agencies and brands to achieve superior digital advertising outcomes by leveraging proprietary panels, AI models, intent signals, and contextual data. I'm happy now to hand the session over to Mark Bassett. Mark?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the intro, Anne, and thank you everyone for taking the time to kind of listen to me and my colleague Darcy speak. As Anne mentioned, we are from Precisify, and as Anne also mentioned, Precisify used to be called Precise TV, so you may know us under a different name, but we celebrated our 10th anniversary at the end of last year and rebranded at the beginning of this year. And as Anne mentioned, essentially what we do and my team does and our team does is we help brands and agencies when it comes to understanding the YouTube paid media space, executing campaigns on the YouTube paid media space, mobile gaming and influencer marketing. And we do that with the power of data and technology and really using data to enrich our understanding and brands' understanding of this space and how to use this platform and these platforms well. And one of the ways and one of the data sources that we have is panel data. So we panel multiple times a year kids and teen audiences and parent audiences in a completely kid-safe and COPPA compliant way in order to truly understand the nature of those audiences and understand how to reach them effectively. And we believe by doing this, you can reduce your media wastage hugely. We work with probably lots of you on this call already, and we've been doing this again for a really long time, and excited to kind of take you through some of our learnings from our most recent kind of panel study. Darcy, next slide, please. Quick agenda for us. We're going to go through first a bit of an overview of the kind of landscape. We're then going to go, or Darcy's going to go into kind of co-viewing. I'm going to come back and talk to you a little bit about influencers and the data that we have there. We're going to then go into kind of collectibles and the Kidult space and some of the insights that we have from that. And then finish up with holiday and kind of toy shopping. And we're going to then have a couple of sort of kind of key takeaways from us that we think are kind of interesting and exciting. But Darcy, next slide. To kind of kick things off, all of you on this call have probably seen a lot of graphs that look like this. And essentially, we've talked about over the last 10 years, the point at which YouTube viewership will overtake TV viewership. And this is the year that that is predicted to happen in the kids space. So YouTube is no longer, or kids TV is no longer this thing that's happening on Saturday morning television, and kids are tuning into that. Kids are tuning into YouTube. That is what they're watching. They're watching it on their TV. They're watching it on their tablet. And you as marketeers, especially in the toy space, need to understand that audience and how to use YouTube effectively and how to target those audiences effectively, because the numbers are only going up. It's only getting bigger. And that's just one of the social platforms that's taking that viewership. Darcy, if we go to the next slide. Um, and the reality is for you as toy brands is this is the place that kids are discovering your brands first. 60% of toys are discovered via social media. And this is a stat that's not from us, it's from a third party, but it's an incredibly powerful statistic that just proves that you need to understand how to communicate to this audience on YouTube. And if you're not doing it, then you're going to get left behind. And we see often lots of people talk about, unboxing videos being the sort of the key thing to do. The reality is that that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like there is so much content out there. Understanding which content to be creating yourself, understanding which content to be working with creators on, and understanding which content to put paid media behind is really difficult. Like you need data and insights to be able to do that, which we're going to tell you about. Next slide, Darcy. And being the influencer guy, I'm going to talk to you a lot about influencers and the power of influencers. But again, this is one of those stats that 5 years ago, even people were questioning the power of influencers. And often that came down to they didn't know how to measure them or use them effectively. But the reality is they're incredibly powerful, and they're incredibly powerful at driving your bottom line, at driving sales for you and your brand. So you have to know how to use them. And the days of relying on just PR, marketing, and gifting, they are over. Like there is enough people in this space that are paying creators and working with creators that you have to know what your strategy is and how you can support those creators and their communities with your brand. Next slide. So just kind of kicking things off and diving into sort of the reports that we're going to take you through. So the first one is the top line sort of interesting stats that we have for Precisify, what we call Precisify Insights Kids, which was previously called from when we were Precise TV, was called Park as a report. And that looks at kids 2 to 12 and their parents. And then we're also taking you through Precise Insights teens, which is looking at 13 to 17-year-olds. And that used to be called Park as a report when we were under Precise TV. And the reason why these reports are kind of super powerful is they give us a really deep understanding, because we're paneling these kids and their parents, a deep understanding into what they're watching, what they're doing, how are they doing it, what do they like most, what don't they like. And so we can pull off really interesting and powerful data that we use to kind of empower the campaigns that we're doing, but we also share with the industry and with the space and with Anne, and you will all be receiving the top line reports to kind of dive into and are really useful and helpful for you. Next slide. I'm going to hand over to Darcy to kind of really start getting into the meat of it all. So over to you, Darcy.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I thought it would be a nice way to sort of start off by talking about an overview of the toy landscape and sort of where we're sitting currently at the moment, and then looking a little bit at YouTube specifically and the impact that the platform has on Generation Alpha and their parents, who we know are super engaged audiences with all of your brands. So starting off with quite a positive picture, which makes a bit of a nice change. Obviously, there's been quite a few challenges and strains that the toy industry have faced in sort of recent times. So it's actually really nice to see that as of Q3 2025, we're actually seeing year-on-year growth for the toy industry for the first time since 2022, which is really great news. You can see that reflected there in the total dollar sales uplift of 6%. And if we look at the average selling price, which is up 4%, also combined with the uplift in units sold, this is sort of really giving a signal to a shift towards this sort of higher value product that we see the customers shopping for. They're continuously purchasing at the higher price points, and we know there's different categories of toys, such as these collectibles, that are very much viewed now as must-have items. So hopefully this is sort of reflecting the resilience of the industry, and this sort of trajectory will continue into 2026 as we've seen it already in Q1, and just a nice place to start. So taking then a little bit of a closer look at the leading brands that are sort of fueling this growth for the industry. This data comes from our proprietary panel research, as Mark mentioned, and we've been running, sort of tracking the performance of these really popular brands across different metrics such as awareness, favourites, and ownership as well. And for the past 4 years, where we've run our Kids US panel specifically, we've seen Lego come out as number one in terms of awareness, but also across the other metrics too. So we know that they're very much a giant in the toy industry, and we think part of this, which Mark will talk about a little bit later, is sort of this welcoming of new fan communities and sort of the really innovative techniques that they're using. But it's all about sort of reframing the messaging so that they can sort of be inclusive to this kidult sort of newcomer category. So obviously a lot of these brands you'll recognise as very much household names, but I just wanted to also call out the Squishmallows there on the very right-hand side. So this is sort of more of a newcomer to the scene, I suppose you could say. They've actually been named as sort of having the IT Collectibles for 2026. They're working on lots of sort of trend-related partnerships, and they're definitely one to watch, which is exciting. And there's lots of others like this as well. And I just wanted to also touch on the point that obviously the awareness bar for all of these brands is super high. And I think it highlights quite a nice opportunity that there is a great space to be able to close the gap between the awareness piece and ownership. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is how we can potentially drive those conversions so that the customers that are aware of your brands then become owners, and then later on you become their favorites. So talking about all those different brands, we also know with that comes a huge variety of content that Gen Alpha and their parents are consuming on a daily basis. It's sort of an ever-expanding list, and we know that platforms like YouTube play a really vital role in stimulating these communities and these audiences. You can see here that toy videos on YouTube actually generate 50 billion views each year. It's a massive part of sort of the full entertainment scope in terms of the toy industry. And it's definitely a platform to sort of make use of and again help drive those conversions. So looking a little bit more at YouTube and Gen Alpha, this again from our data is an overview of what the kids are saying they spend their time on. So you can see here that 75% said YouTube was their number one. And if you look at the age breakdown over towards the right, you can see that that number actually raises to 80% for the 10 to 12 age range. So across the board, it's very much a shared opinion that YouTube is number one for them. That's where their attention lives. And they're very much highly engaged on that platform. Obviously, as well, we know with this group of individuals that they're very much digital natives. So it sort of comes at no surprise that second screening is a very popular behaviour across the group. We've spoken about this in our other reports and webinars, but our data shows that the kids are also active on YouTube while doing other behaviours. So while the TV is on in the background, they're active on the platform. Similarly, 45% of kids are also playing mobile games while the TV is playing in the background. And again, you can see across those age breakdowns, the percentages are super high. So this is a behaviour that we know exists across the kids that are engaging on the platforms. And we know that they're always watching some sort of screen, whether that be one at a time or two. They're very much highly engaged. That being said, it's sort of in no way to say that the TV screen itself is now redundant. When these kids are fully attentive to one single platform, for example, YouTube, our data shows that over half of them are actually watching this on a TV screen. And you can see the breakdowns there. It's very popular across the board as well. So as we see this shift of YouTube sort of becoming a more mainstream form of entertainment inside the family sort of living room space, we're seeing kids and families enjoy the content and consume the content as a collective. And this data sort of really reflects that point, where it's becoming sort of the hub of the family living room. So that concept of YouTube sort of really living in the center of the family household brings us nicely to the topic of co-viewing. We've spoken about this as well various times in our reports. We think it's a really important behavior to look into. We know this is the sort of action of parents and kids consuming content together at the same time. And we're just going to take a little look at what this means and what the opportunities with this is for toy brands such as yourselves. So our data shows that 55%, so over half of parents, are actively co-viewing YouTube with their kids. So I think what's really key here to take away from this message is that not only does this give you the opportunity to connect with the child, who is predominantly the one who maybe first catches a glimpse of the content and toy content, but it also gives you the power to sort of influence the ultimate decision maker at the same time. So again, going back to that awareness to ownership journey, this sort of really is a great opportunity to connect both those key audiences at once, and sort of really get that message across that leads to purchase. Looking from sort of the kids kind of point of view on this, they say a very similar message. So while there is some solo viewing going on of YouTube, you can see here that 50% are watching with their parents, and it's quite a similar story as well for YouTube Shorts. So 45% have said they watch that platform with their parents as well. So across both long form and short form content, we're seeing that co-viewing remains sort of a really key behavior. And with that comes that great opportunity that I mentioned. So as I touched on before, obviously there is a myriad of content out there and it's growing every single day. So it's actually really great to see that while cartoons remain in the #1 spot for favourite co-viewed content, toys and games content is actually within the top 3. So it's really great that we know content related to toys and games is enjoyed by parents and kids together during this sort of key time for opportunity. So yes, that's a really positive message. And we've spoken a lot about, driving awareness and the kids and parents really paying attention to the content, but it's also really important and impactful to mention that this is also leading to purchase decisions further down the line. So our research shows that 77% of parents actually experience their child asking for a product that they've seen in an ad during co-viewing. And we sort of see as well from the data that 80% of these requests are happening specifically off the back of YouTube ads. So again, it's going back to that point of that really key time to be able to sort of not only immediately impact the child and they have that immediate recall, but you're also being able to have sort of the high intense attention of the parent at the same time. And while that child's recall may be more immediate, our data also shows that YouTube ads have a longer lasting impact on parents, and they can recall the ads that they see on this platform more than other platforms, which ultimately then lead to further purchase decisions, which you can see here. So all the way through from sort of awareness to recall, we're seeing parents remember these ads on YouTube and then making a decision off the back of that. So 50% of parents are purchasing for their kids and saying that the last place they saw the ad is on YouTube. So overall, that sort of, I hope, paints a very strong picture and a very clear picture that these audiences are very much engaged and interacting on platforms like YouTube. And it's a great opportunity for toy brands to be able to connect with them and drive that impact. And now I'm going to hand over to Mark, who's going to talk about the impact of influencers in the space as well.
Thanks, Darcy. So yeah, as you heard from Darcy, YouTube is a critical platform to understand what content is being created and watched. And the reality is that influencers, in my view, and the data shows this, are the people who are driving the stories. They're creating the stories that audiences are engaged with. They're the ones who are uh, trending new topics, new ways of play, new things that are kind of exciting to kids and kids, and they get direct feedback from kids. They're getting they can see from the content that's resonating and successful what's working, and they'll double down on that. So understanding what content's working well and understanding what types of creators are working well is incredibly important as you plan your kind of influencer strategy and what types of creators that you're going to be working with. Unsurprisingly, lots of this data mirrors what Darcy just took you through, but with an influencer kind of twist and perspective. And the reality is that kids are watching a whole load of YouTube, and they're watching a whole load of social media, but they're watching a lot of YouTube. And almost 1/3 of kids, 6 to 12, are watching influencer content. And so again, when you think about, okay, if you're a brand or a partner that hasn't thought about like what their influencer strategy is and how they're going to ensure that influencers are talking about their product and talking about it in the right way with the right messaging, then you're gonna fail. You're doing things wrong. You have to have a strategy that's clear and data backed and data led. And the reality that we have quite often is lots of audiences and lots of brands and agencies will ask us and say to us, "Oh, but isn't it just boys that are watching kind of influencer content? Isn't it at this age? Isn't it just them that's watching it?" And the truth is, no, it's not. It's boys and girls, and in basically the same number. Like boys skew a little bit higher in terms of the percentage points and watching more content, more influencer content than girls, but girls are very, very close behind. And this starts young. For the kind of eagle-eyed people in the audience who realize that we haven't reported on the 2+ audience, that's simply because what we found is as you start to go below about 5, we start to see that actually the kids can't delineate very clearly between what is an influencer piece of content and what isn't. So we're actually adjusting some of our systems our side to really start to kind of understand that data and ask the right questions to kind of get the right answers for that audience. But yes, 1/3 of kids are watching influencer content, which is just such a huge number. And then one of the other topics that we get asked a lot about is brands who are really trying to understand where the best place to spend their money is when it comes to influencers and what platform should they be creating content on. And so one of the questions that we've asked these audiences is, okay, where are they watching influencer content and where does that happen first? And the answer is kind of a resounding, it's YouTube. Like YouTube is still very much the king of platforms when it comes to creators making content and being the place that kids are watching that content. YouTube Shorts is actually the second one. So if you were to combine them both, they would be a way ahead. And the reality is that TikTok does start to in the girls audience particularly as they start to get older does start to become more of a compelling platform, as does Instagram and some of the other platforms, but very much YouTube is still king. So you need to have a kind of clear view of what you're doing with influencers on YouTube. And again, if you've got limited time and resources, YouTube would be certainly one of our strong recommendations for where you should be headed to first as you build out your campaigns. Next slide, please, Darcy. And very similar to some of the data that Darcy showed, ultimately, actually, 80% of kids are asking their parents for things that they've seen an influencer talk about. Again, as I mentioned in the beginning, the days of questioning how powerful kind of influencer content is over. Kids are watching this stuff, and actually, they often almost don't realize that it's like influencers they're watching. It's just more content that they're watching on the platform itself. And it's hugely important, therefore, again, to know like what you're doing with creators and how also are you telling stories with those creators and communicating to these audiences in a really effective way so that the kids themselves are engaged with it, they're excited about it and excited about your products. And the reality is very similar again to Darcy's stats, is that toys and games essentially make up almost half the panel results that we've got in terms of the things that people are asking about most. And that's not unsurprising when you think about the nature of what creators are kind of doing and talking about on the platform, and when they're playing with toys, they're showing them off, etc. So hugely important and hugely powerful for you in the audience as you think about this space and the audience you're going after. The other thing that's actually, I think, really surprising is a lot of people, when they think about influencer work, they think about it as like this flash in the pan moment. They see it as like, okay, we're going to make this influencer content. It goes out, it gets views over the next, 7 days, and then it's gone, and then they're off to the next thing. And the reality is that if you do influencer content well, and you work with the right creator, you work with the right content, you come up with the right creative and story, it actually lives in kids' minds, and they recall it, and they can talk about it, and they can remember the product that is being shown. Again, you have to do it in the right way, but it's incredibly powerful. It doesn't disappear, and the nature also of YouTube is it lives there often forever, and so actually audiences will come back time and time again, and you'll notice more often than not that actually partnerships and sponsorships with creators, that's the start of a relationship between a brand and that creator that can go on for many years, and actually sometimes hundreds of videos of content talking and showing off how to play with your toy or product. So it's very powerful, and it stays in kids' minds. Next slide, please, Darcy. And just like Darcy said, kids are second screening YouTube. That's happening kind of all the time. And I know from my kids, it's like a regular fixture. We basically can't watch normal TV without them also having their tablets. And the reality is that the content that they're watching, a lot of it is made by influencers. And certainly what you'll see more and more, and anybody who has kids on this call, you'll see the kid will be watching maybe their brother or even playing themselves something like Minecraft on the TV, and then actually they're watching a creator talk about a game or talk about a toy, or sometimes even talking about like different tips and techniques of Minecraft that they're mirroring and copying. And that happens across kind of all products. Is you'll see kids might be watching a family film with the family, but then they're watching kind of some of the latest kind of influencer content on their tablet. So it's happening, and it's incredibly important, because as you start to think about the content that you're creating with brands, and you start with creators, and you're starting to think about the right type of content to be making with them, you also need to kind of have in mind that sometimes people are sort of are distracted. So you need to have clear messaging, clear communication about the types of key messages that you want to get across to your audience, to make sure that kids kind of really take it in. And then it's not just toys and games that kids are finding out about on YouTube. It's movies, it's TV shows, and actually we're helping a lot of partners with that, promoting their movies and TV shows and bringing them to life with kids' favorite creators. And it becomes a really powerful kind of moment to illustrate your story with the spin of what the creator does and their usual programming. And so actually 32% of boys and girls aged 10 to 12 discover new movies through influencer videos. So again, hugely powerful. And we're also doing work where people are launching their own channels and their own content on YouTube for their own brands, illustrating what that looks like. And we're helping promote that with creators, kind of sharing that story and encouraging people to watch it on YouTube itself. So it's not just films that are in the cinema. And another thing that we get asked a lot about is, okay, there's thousands of creators out there. In fact, there's actually now at this point, I think hundreds of millions of creators across the globe, across all platforms. And who are the people that we should be working with? And the reality with this space is that kids will often remember, the top names, and these top names reoccur time and time again through the surveys that we've done. And it's the usual suspects. It's the Blippies, it's the Natashas, it's the Mr. Beasts, it's the Unspeakables. But the thing that I say to brands is, as you think about this space, not everyone is going to have the opportunity to work with these people, and not always are these people the right fit for your brand. But what you can do is use these people to understand what's happening when it comes to trends, understand the types of content that's resonating, and understand the data behind those. And one of the other things that I think is really important about some of the data that you'll get in the full report is that lots of platforms and the platforms themselves cannot report on under 18 data for all kinds of regulatory reasons. And so what you'll often find is actually if you're using a third party tool, creators like Mr. Beast, it shows up as having no audience under 18 or a very tiny audience under 18. And if anybody again has kids in this room, guaranteed almost that they're watching, if they're 6 to 9 years old, they're watching Mr. Beast. From our data, we know that it's actually about 40% of his audience are kids watching his content. And so no doubt that will change over time, and actually it constantly evolves as we do these reports and the data evolves. But it's hugely important to kind of remember that and not necessarily rely on tools and data that they can't report on this audience. And so that's kind of part of the sort of the influencer sort of insights and analysis. I think that the key thing really for you all is that it's, again, you have to have your understanding of what you're doing with creators and influencers and how they should be communicating with your brand, communicating about your brand and your products, and actually what is the right type of content and what are the right types of creators. And again, the report will give you sort of helpful insights into that. We're now going to talk a little bit about collectibles and Kidults. I am a self-confessed collector, as you can probably tell from all the pictures behind me, and definitely a Kidult. And this is a space that has certainly been growing really rapidly and over the last couple of years, but has existed for a really long time. And actually, the gaming space, I think, has done a really good job of understanding how to kind of resonate with these audiences. So Darcy, if you go into the next slide, as I mentioned, the space is growing hugely, and in fact, actually, there's data that says that it's grown almost 12% in the first quarter of 2025. So it's compounding the growth, and you see the brands who are doing it really well have really understood actually how to get at this audience, how to engage with them, how to excite them, and really kind of actually reap the rewards and the benefits from that. As we go to the next slide, Darcy. One of the things that we're often asked about is, okay, what creators should we be working with for this space? And the quick and honest answer is it really hugely depends on the audience that you're going after, your product, and what it does, and the stories that we can tell with it with creators, and how those creators can engage with your product with their community. And just to give you kind of a bit of an example, creators like Mark Rober fit in that really kind of brand safe kid and adult audiences. He's launched his own STEM toy and kind of product line and is been hugely successful with it. But then actually, as you look at Lego creators, that's a huge area that's really exploded over the last few years, and there's a lot of content where they will share their as what's called AFOLs, adult fans of Lego. They will share like their excitement for the new products, new product launches, and then actually do unboxings and break down how that kind of product fits into their collection. And so it varies hugely. It's the same with kind of Pop Mart and kind of and other areas as we go through. And actually touching on that, so the collectible space has exploded too, as it's really grown, and that comes a lot from adults who now have big kids and now have adult money, and so can both spend it on spend it on toys, but also on collectibles that they remember often from their youth. And so Again, in 2025, 32%, there was a 32% increase globally in the kind of collectible market. And when it comes to kind of creators and YouTube and sort of content that's been created, it's actually spawned a whole new category of people doing rips. So they'll rip open packs of Pokemon cards, or it could be Yu-Gi-Oh cards, or it could be One Piece cards, and it's spawned a whole kind of almost like a whole new community, and really exploded that community, and formed a whole new set of content, from people who love the art through to people who love just the challenge of trying to find certain rare cards, through to people who are actually more like investors. And I think we'll see that more and more and more as kind of kidults become more of a thing, as brands understand how to work with them and engage with those audiences. We will see these communities grow, and you as marketeers really need to kind of understand how to kind of get involved with them and use them. And actually, just one last thing, like I said before, unboxing for me is the sort of is the peak of the iceberg, and it's the simple thing that you see in the data because it's easy for people to understand and comprehend what it is. But there's so many more forms of content that are really powerful that you can get involved with. When it comes to that. Darcy, next slide, please. So how are we doing time-wise? We're looking good. Okay, so just diving into actually some of our data, what I really like from our data is we're seeing that this is an opportunity for parents to pick up on brands and hobbies that they had as a kid, but using that as a time to kind of engage with their own kids and have fun and have something that they can kind of both connect on. And so, the again, lots of the kind of probably not the unsurprising brands appear as we ask, okay, what are the kind of collective interests that you have with your kid? Lego, certainly for boys, Lego, Marvel, Pokemon, they all kind of score highly. And then actually, as Darcy mentioned, there's a few other kind of interesting brands that come in there, like Jellycat and Sunny Angel, which are sort of collectible little figures. And then when we go to kind of girls, it's a really similar picture. So it's actually Darcy, if you go next slide, Lego, drops a little bit, but then you have some more of the girl focused brands kind of increase a little bit. But again, as I said, this is definitely a sector that I think has huge opportunity for brands to kind of lean into and think about how they can create content on these platforms to engage with these audiences and get both parties excited about it. Next slide. And ultimately, another kind of big number here to sort of end things with is collectibles now account for almost 19% of the global toy sales. So having a really clear vision of how you engage with these audiences, how you engage with them, particularly on social media, and how you can kind of get them excited about your products and get them excited about and their kids excited about your products as well is really important to have that buttoned up. Next slide, Darcy, please. So now I'm going to hand over to Darcy just again to go through kind of holiday period and holiday toy shopping.
Great, thanks, Mark. So we thought we would do a brief section about holiday toy shopping. I think we all know it's never too early to start talking about this. The timelines get longer and longer every single year. So we're just going to have a quick look at sort of this always on mindset and a little bit more detail to sort of look at the key times and approaches and behaviors that we're seeing that can maybe be helpful this upcoming year. So obviously we all know that the sort of majority of physical sales in the toy industry do come towards the end of the year. So those final 3 months is where 60 to 70% of toy sales take place. And obviously, while it's extremely important to be completely set up and ready to go for that peak period, there's a huge opportunity, as we've sort of touched on, to build that affinity for your brand and connect with these key audiences and customers long before this time period and sort of throughout the whole entire year. So just looking at a little snippet of data from Sprout Social, this is sort of highlighting the point that shoppers are actually starting to think about gift ideas as early as August, which may sound quite crazy, but realistically, this is what the behavior is that we're seeing today. And from that point in August, we're seeing people make purchases and continue to sort of keep making those purchases all the way up until the holidays. And you can see here, and what Mark has sort of touched on and we've spoken about throughout, is the impact of these online platforms. And here you can see that 19% of people think that holiday campaigns should actually begin in August, and you'll see 25% in September. So leading up to that peak time, there is a great opportunity to be able to sort of connect and build those relationships prior to sort of that peak time, which you don't want to miss out on. Looking from the kids' perspective specifically, our data, we asked them when they're making their wish lists, and over half of kids have said they're actually making them at least 2 months before Christmas. So all of the different content we've spoken about and all of the different avenues of engagement that we've covered obviously means that there's a huge range of toys and brands and products coming up all the time that they will just take straight away and put it on the wish list. And obviously, as the wish list writing time is getting earlier and earlier, parents are likely to also start shopping earlier and earlier to try and sort of start the quest to tick off those items. So obviously, as Mark touched on, in terms of influencers, we know that kids are watching these videos and sort of getting inspiration from this content. And it's sort of very much the new source of discovery and search for the toy industry as well, which is really important. And then just a final look at this from the parents' point of view as well. So this is just a full breakdown of the whole year. Again, you can see that opportunity does exist throughout the whole entire year, even as early as January. You know, people are thinking, oh, maybe should have asked for that toy last year, and adding it to their list straight away for the year to come. So the opportunity exists throughout the whole entire year. And we think this is sort of a really nice way to look at it in terms of splitting out the months. Overall, we think, you know, the online platforms are a huge avenue to be able to spread the word and not only build that awareness as we spoke about, but then all the way through the funnel, sort of convert those customers, both kids and parents, into sort of owners of your brands, as well as sort of growing the love for them to become their favorites. So something to start thinking about now, which is exciting. I'm just going to hand back over to Mark for a really quick recap of everything we've gone through, and just a few key takeaways to take with you after the session.
Great, thanks, Darcy. So everyone, hopefully you've found that kind of really insightful and interesting. And I think you'll all enjoy reading through the kind of the full report, which you'll be getting. And there's lots of really interesting insights there to kind of take away to help kind of empower you. I think for me, there's sort of three key things that are exciting, kind of interesting to take away, or certainly from sort of our perspective. Number one, as we think there's a really big opportunity when it comes to YouTube and using that as a platform to reach Gen Alpha and parents. And that is not only from how do you reach them individually, but also how do you reach them and communicate to them effectively when it comes to kind of co-viewing. And I think really what you should be taking away from the kind of the data is that YouTube is number one. That's where people and this audience are watching. Kids and parents enjoy watching together. And so understanding how to do that well when it comes to kind of your marketing is going to be a really big opportunity. And the brands that are doing it really well. Secondly, thinking about second screening and what that means for sort of opportunities when it comes to kind of paid media and opportunities for going after audiences is really important. And thinking about the tone and style of the ad content that you're making and the content that you're making with creators is really important as well, as you think about that. And I think there's lots of, also, to be honest, something I didn't mention, I think there's huge amounts of exciting opportunity to think about to using that in kind of interesting and exciting ways and being like kind of innovative about the opportunity there. And then lastly, and biasly, influencer marketing, I think is something that, now really you need to have your plans together. I think, again, really passionately that you should be supporting creators and supporting kind of their communities in interesting and kind of fun ways. And I think solely sticking to, essentially gambling with just gifting campaigns is not a way to kind of succeed long term. And so you need to have an understanding of how you are going to work deeper with these creators, and understanding of the data to find the right people to work with, because there's lots of messy data out there. Um, and so, yeah, that's me and Darcy. Thank you very much for kind of the time, and hopefully that's been sort of really interesting. Here is just while we take kind of a few questions, if anybody's asked any. Here's QR code that you can scan to kind of get access to the full report early. If not, Anne will be sending it around to kind of everyone, and this presentation and the recording for anybody that kind of that missed it. But thank you very much for your time. And Anne, over to you for
Yes.
any questions that have come in.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Darcy. So now we have time for Q&A. Please use the Q&A icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we ask that you keep your questions general in nature and not address any individual company or product. And so we do have some questions in the queue. And the first is, with co-viewing rates so high, should we target our ad creative toward the child, the parent, or a mix of both to capitalize on purchase requests?
Darcy, do you want to take this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Great question. I think, as we sort of touched on throughout, the opportunity with co-viewing is huge and a really important one to sort of take advantage of. In terms of who you're targeting, in terms of the creative, we obviously know that in a way the kids are sort of holding the remote, if you like, or holding the tablet. So ultimately it's their eyeballs that first sort of catch the attention. So from that perspective, we would sort of say that your creative needs to be fun, and I'm sure Mark can speak to that in terms of the influencer side of things. It needs to be eye-catching and sort of innovative and something different that will make them click on it in the first place. But also you need to sort of have that small snippet maybe there and messaging to sort of want to make the parents say yes to the requests that then come in from the kids that they're doing with. So yeah, I would say definitely as at face value, we need to grab the kids' attention, but there's definitely sort of a secondary goal to warm up the parent, if you like, later down the line.
Thank you, Darcy. We have another question. Your report showed YouTube viewership projected to overtake linear TV. Does this mean that we should be shifting our entire TV budget to YouTube, or is there still a specific role for broadcast TV in the 2026 media mix?
I can
Darcy,
start
do you
going
want
off, Mark. Yeah, you can jump in if you want.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, if we're looking at the data that we have available to us, all of our proprietary panels, we're hearing firsthand from the kids and from these really engaged audiences, and we can't ignore the data, right? So this is telling us that YouTube is where the attention lives for kids in the US, 2 to 12. And obviously, if you aren't implementing a strategy that encompasses YouTube, where we know the majority of them are watching, then you're not present in the location where their attention lives. So it's not to say it needs to be an all or nothing strategy or situation, but we think it could potentially be a huge missed opportunity to not include the platform in your media plans. And sort of, we know these younger audiences are more difficult to grab, and we know obviously existing natively and connecting with them natively, as we spoke about, is a really impactful way to do this. So yeah, Mark, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think I'm a digital guy been in digital marketing for a long time, and I'm a big lover of kind of creators and YouTube. And for me, what I would say is I think it comes down to also looking at the historical evidence that you have over what is working. And I think that will kind of shine a light into kind of what's working. The beauty of the sort of YouTube and sort of digital space is there's lots of different ways to kind of measure and understand what's working, what's happening. And so for me, again, you have to make a data backed decision. And biasly, I think, YouTube is absolutely critical to that decision. And the reality also is every single day that goes by, that graph is going to get steeper and steeper for YouTube and shallower for linear TV, in my view. And just, I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen, but over the last sort of couple of months, the effort and energy that YouTube themselves are putting into uh, encouraging more creators onto the platform, encouraging more styles of content, the effort that they put into YouTube Shorts, it's not going away anytime soon. And I think that number is gonna exponentially change. So getting your data and understandings in now and investing in the right way is going to be hugely important in my view. Um,
Thank you, Mark and Darcy. We have another question. When is the sweet spot to launch a high impact influencer campaign to ensure we're on kids' wish lists before it's too late?
oh gosh, good questions. Darcy, I'll take this one and then jump in. So, um, I'll answer this in a couple of different ways. So, way number one is working with creators takes time. Where it goes wrong is often where people don't give themselves or give the creator enough time to come up with a beautiful idea that the audience are going to be excited with and engage with, but also for the creator to actually make that content and do a good job and create kind of something beautiful that the audience are going to feel like is being empowered by you, the brand, versus something that's addy that no one likes. And so, one thing I would say is you need to give yourself enough time, and it takes longer than you might imagine to do it well. And so, typically, to give you an idea, we normally plan 6 to 8 weeks to run a campaign. And so, as you start to think about Christmas, and you think about kind of holiday periods, for example, or key shopping windows, you have to factor that in, but you also have to factor in that creators are getting booked up earlier and earlier and earlier. And sometimes when I say that to people, people think, oh, that's like that's a sort of salesy message to try and get you to sign up. It's literally not. Like, creators will be booked up. They will not be able to run your creative. So you might spend hours and hours and hours finding the perfect creator, looking at the data, they're the perfect person. And then actually when you speak to them, they're like, well, I can't do this. I'm booked up until January. And so that's something that you have to factor in too. So my advice to you would be start a good sort of quarter ahead, if not even earlier, to make sure you're planning and you've got a good strategy, and then you've got enough time to speak to the creators, to have that conversation, to get great content, to then get great results. Would be my advice.
Thanks,
Darcy,
Mark.
oh, gone.
Yeah, there's another question. You spoke at length earlier about key influencers, but we have another question for a toy brand just starting with influencers. Is it
Yeah.
better to work with the top tier names or focus on smaller family-oriented creators?
Good. Yeah. Good question. So the truth, the answer for this really is a challenging one. Like, what I would say is that typically my recommendation is to obviously, one, look at your budgets. Like, if your budgets are below a certain level, then you're not going to be able to engage with big talent. But two, look at what you're trying to achieve, and look at actually the audience that you're going after, because that will also delineate what path that you take. And often what I like to do in our approach is we will work with a range of creators on a typical campaign, some that are bigger that will give you kind of reach and give you scale, and then some that are smaller that are often give you much higher engagement numbers and results from that point of view. And together we find this really nice blend of getting good reach and good results. But sometimes also, if your product is you're really trying to go really mainstream and you're looking looking for kind of new sources of creators, you might have almost like drunk your well dry in your niche, and so you have to start looking outside of that niche. And sometimes that can mean looking at bigger creators, or sometimes it means looking at a completely kind of new category in a new niche. So it's a tricky question to answer, but I think my idea would be to look at a good kind of blend for you. Typically, is the way I would recommend things.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Darcy. That's all the questions we have. I wanted to thank Darcy and Mark for this very informative presentation. We'll be getting the full report to everybody who registered. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today and hope you'll join us for another webinar in the very near future. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Thank you very
thanks.
much.